looks like it's working. What's happening, everybody? Everybody's having a fantastic, whatever day you're watching this. So, guys, I get a lot of questions about oil. If I had to break down the top 5 questions that I get on the channel, guys DMing me, just generic questions on any random video that I have, like the top 5, oil is going to show up somewhere. It's practically guaranteed. So what I wanted to do is talk to you guys a little bit about oil, but more to the point, well, it's me. So you know I probably will have gone absolutely stupid, and hopefully this is popping up for you. I created this obnoxious spreadsheet that I'm going to be referencing when I'm talking about this stuff. And to let you guys know, it looks like I've got, this is 0W40 to 5W40, 30 different oils that I looked at. Now you might say, well, there's 30 different oils? That was the biggest surprise, number one. And this isn't even all of them. All right, this is, I don't know how many there are, but, and I'm not talking about 30 different brands, but I'll tell you this, there's a lot of different brands. And when I sort them, you've got Amyl, Amsoil, Castrol, Champion. Some of these I've never even heard of. Liquid Moly, Lucas, Mag 1, Mobile 1, Motul, Pennzoil, Raven Oil, Redline, Rotella, Royal Purple, Schaefer's, Shell Helix, Triax, Valvoline, and Warren. How many was that? Was anybody even counting on that? That's a ton of different brands, and I've got 30 different actual SKUs that I figured I would at least want to have a sample set so I could talk about this kind of stuff. And what I did is I went through all of the synthetic 0W40 and 5W40 oils that were out there. The A3B4, which is a European spec 5W30, which is in essence basically a 0W40 in a way. And by the way, the range of what constitutes a 0W40 or a 5W40 is crazy in terms of viscosity. Now, what I'm going to be talking about, so when you start talking about oil, there's oil viscosity, the weight of the oil, but I want to talk about different aspects of the testing of the oil, why it matters, and why it is that getting in there and picking and choosing the right oil for your application can be a little bit tricky, but it can also be a little bit more important than you think. So let me check in with you guys real quick, and then we'll start climbing into this. And by the way, I want to say this right off the jump here. I understand that there are guys that dive deep into lubricant technologies, and there's a lot of jargon out there on this subject that I may not get 100% right. I think I've got it all pretty well sorted though. But I get it. There's a lot of guys out there that have a lot of opinions on oil, and they are very, very enthusiastic about this topic. Guys, what I did is I did what a consumer would do. I looked at all of the synthetic oils, took some notes, did some study, and watched as many engineering type videos that I could find, talked to some engineer type guys that I know that do this stuff kind of for a living, and kind of dove into it from that perspective. So I got a chance to learn a lot, and I also got a chance to learn, well, let me kind of tell you this. I got a chance to learn a lot, but what I learned in learning a lot about this subject is that a lot of what you think matters kind of ends up canceling itself out in the process of this. And a lot of that has to do with what group oil we're really talking about. So anyway, let me check in with you guys. I'm going to jump square into this. I want to try to get to y'all's questions too. X is in, first in, saying, what up, Professor B? Got the shades. Let me get my H-Towns on. I like it. Sovereign's in. Mod on the job. I like it. Eric is in. Good evening. Marco's asking, what do you think of the new Frontier? I'm thinking about buying one. I like it. I haven't driven one, but all of the Frontiers are actually pretty good. They seem to be pretty durable. Hemi Dad is in. What's up, brother? Guitar Man saying, hey, I finally got me a Challenger, found in 2012 and 9,500 miles. Somebody loved that car. Very nice. Marco Muay Thai is in. I like it. Ryan is in saying, what's up, Fraser? What's up, Ryan? Owen is in, checking in. Sovereign saying Slick 50. Get that. So if you guys are of a certain age, you'll know what Slick 50 is, and it was snake oil like you wouldn't believe. The marketing on Slick 50 was funny. Just Google it if you need a good, I don't know, car-related laugh. Let's see, Ardell's in. What's up? Good seeing you. Give that pig some bacon grease. That's about right. Chuck is in saying, I'm in, B. Good deal. Joseph's in. Sovereign's in. Saying hello to all his fellow, his sentinels that are out there, my fellow mods. He's saying, X is saying talking about oil is one of his favorite topics. Very cool. Joseph got him a 2020 50th anniversary shaker. Very nice. So check it out. Chase is in. What's up, buddy? All right. So here's the deal. Talking about oil for your car. This is where things get so weird. If you've got a Hellcat or an SRT powered contraption, it's going to be, you'll always have an oil that will say we recommend. What's funny is that for the longest time, it was always Mobil 1, but Pennzoil Platinum is kind of the pivot oil. By the way, when you're looking at the chart, I'm going to try to show this chart as much as I possibly can. I don't have the ability to do the screen and all of that stuff for you. But anyway, you don't really need it. Just kind of follow along, just kind of listen along. So Pennzoil Platinum, interesting oil in that if you look at where it falls in the whole grand scheme of the products that I was looking at, it falls near the very top. In fact, it's in the top top 5. So you can see right here. And by the way, those oils that are in green, those are the ones that you could call them the most easily sourced. So in other words, at your local box store or at your local could be hardware store, could be an auto parts store, you're going to find Castrol Edge, Mobil 1, Pennzoil Platinum, which is a big maybe, by the way, and Valvoline. Mobil 1 is at kind of the top of the list when it comes to how thin it is, the actual viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius. It's not by the numbers the best oil, at least you wouldn't think. And the funny thing about it is that Mobil 1 and Pennzoil Platinum are practically identical. If you look at them, number 8 and number 9, in terms of the viscosities that you're looking at, what kind of oil pressure you would expect at any given oil temperature would be roughly the same. So for you guys that were wondering about, okay, well, what about, Mobil 1 versus Pennzoil? What about Castrol Edge? All of them are basically the same in that range. And again, the ones that are the most commercially available are going to be very similar. Now, the strange thing about this is when you start getting into some of the other oils that are floating around out there, your Lucases, your Redlines, for example. The big difference there is in that viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius. That 100 degrees Celsius number is the boiling point of water in centigrade. Basically, it's 212 degrees. 40 degrees centigrade, 40 degrees Celsius would be 104 degrees in freedom units. And what that is you can kind of think of that as the car's kind of warming up. What does all of this stuff mean? Well, the higher the viscosity, the higher the pressure will be up to a certain point. And this is where we've kind of got to get a little bit of housekeeping in order here. Oil pumps are not like a turbocharger without a wastegate. They actually do have valves on them. They're just relief valves. At a certain PSI, that valve opens up, and that will, in other words, make the difference between a high pressure pump and a normal pump, a normal oil pump. Normal oil pump might cap out at 65 PSI. A high pressure pump, it's the exact same pump, could have a different spring in that bypass to make it keep that valve closed longer and maybe open it at 75 or 80 PSI. So it's not like you're getting more flow because you have more oil pressure. It just means that you may be getting less flow at that oil pressure because that bypass is already open because it doesn't want to overpressurize the system. Conversely, if you have 40 PSI at idle and you put a thicker oil in it and it's at 60 PSI at idle, it doesn't necessarily mean you have more oil flowing through the system. It just means that you have more resistance to flow. So keep that in mind. And when you rev the engine to any given RPM, you're going to hit the bypass sooner. So what I want to talk about is just the properties of the oil, but I want to make sure that we get a little bit of that housekeeping out of the way. By the way, again, the only oils that I looked at for true comparison are synthetics. And I know a lot of guys will start getting into the base oils. I've got base oil notes right here. And those were my base oil notes. That's this stuff right here, guys. So if you need to pause that at a later date, go back and check it out. That's basically what designates at the most boiled down criteria. What is a group 3? What's a group 4? What's a group 5? What does any of all this stuff mean? The thing is that none of the oils, rarely will you see oils show what group oil they are. It's typically some kind of a blend. It could be 3 and 4. It could be 4 and 5. But the reality is that most of the time, they don't really show what the base oils are. You'll see some that'll be PAO, which is a polyalpha olefin. That's a lot of hard words to say in this stuff, by the way. Group 5 is basically anything that's not group 4. So a lot of impronounceable words. Polyalkylene, silicone, phosphate, esters, things like that. Basically a lot of words that don't mean a damn thing to you and me, but mean something to people that are putting these things together and people that will sit down and break these things apart. The reality is that when you look at things like viscosity at 40 degrees Celsius, viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius, and viscosity index, it's really more about the additive package than it is about the base oil that's used. As long as it's a group 3 or a group 4, it doesn't really matter. The additive package can make a group 3 outperform a group 4 in some abrasion test or what have you, which, by the way, is a little bit arbitrary. Any of these oils would do just fine in any of those types of testing. So just know that coming into it. To give you guys an idea, the average figures, if you took all 30 of these oils and averaged them out, the viscosity at 40 degrees Celsius, 79.4, at 100 degrees Celsius, which is, again, 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 13.8, and viscosity index of 179. I haven't talked about viscosity index. Viscosity index is basically this. It's a number that designates how well the oil can hold on to viscosity. It is a measurement of resistance to the oil thinning out as the oil gets hot. So in essence, if you have an oil with a viscosity index like Castrol Edge Euro A3B4, it's a 0W40, has a viscosity index of 198. What that means is the difference in the temperature, the viscosity at temperature 40 degrees and at 100 degrees Celsius, that line is going to be a little bit more level. That oil is not really hemorrhaging, so to speak, viscosity numbers as it gets hot. And if you tilt that number like this, that would be a viscosity index that would be less. It might be 170 or 160. And really, when you get into the conventional oils, it looks like this. They just tank. because they start so high, they just lose, and they're just hemorrhaging viscosity numbers as they warm up. But to give you guys an idea, all of the, and I mean every single one of these synthetics will have a viscosity index higher than 173. And in fact, when you look into some of these oils, you start to find out that, well, some of the oils that you think are going to have a really great viscosity index might not have the best. And what I mean by that is diesel oils. A lot of these 5W40s are typically found in some diesel applications. And strangely enough, their viscosity indexes are lower than some of the gasoline, maybe due to heat or what have you. But to give you guys an idea, the lowest is 168, and again, that highest is 198. So pretty wide range there. In terms of which oils out of all of these flowed the best at cooler temperatures, and in this case, this would be 140 degrees Fahrenheit, Castor Oil Edge would come in at 66. Its viscosity at 40C is 66. The highest was Rotella T6. That was a 5W40 at 90. And to give you guys an idea, one of the things that spurred me wanting to do this was I went to my local auto parts store and I was looking for 0W40. And I run 0W40 in practically everything that's not my wife's Jeep. And I found the Castrol 5W40 A3B4, and I just grabbed it and I was running it in the truck in Sierra. And what I noticed is that normal oil pressure looked great. Idle oil pressure looked to be a little bit lower than normal. And so got me to thinking, well, let me go in and check the technical data sheet. And sure enough, it has the lowest viscosity basically at any temperature. And that's one of the reasons why. It wasn't dangerously low. I just noticed that it was a little bit lower, and that's what kind of spurred all this on. So, oh, and another thing, out of all of these oils, you know, we're talking about averages here now. Out of all of these oils, you'll have basically a flash point number. The flash point number is the point where the oil basically breaks down and starts to denature. Denature is just a real fancy way of saying it starts smoking a lot. You're cooking the oil at that point. It's lost its ability to really do much of anything. There's two different specifications. You have a D92 and a D93. And the point that I'm trying to make here is the D92 flash point is looking at a number higher. So D92 will be a higher number. D93 is a lower number for whatever criteria is floating around in there. Somebody out there knows about that better than I do. But here's the funny thing. Flash point numbers on all of these oils averaged about the same. So regardless of what base oil was used, group 3, group 4, 5, delta, epsilon, I don't know, whatever, they all, on a D92 average, hovered around 220 degrees Celsius, and on D93 it was around 205. So they all, regardless of what base oil, what mix they used or anything like that, they all came in at around that number. On the high side, you might see some at 224 or 226 on that D92 average. On the low side, you might have seen 215. It wasn't that far off. And these were some things that were really interesting to me, because I was finding that the oils that I thought would perform really well in that task, they were just kind of average along the spectrum. By the way, to give you guys an idea, so you know we talked about real quickly about that viscosity, that 40 degrees centigrade number. To give you guys an idea of just how much better a synthetic is at dealing with temperature variances and maintaining that, although not really linear, it's at least more linear than a conventional oil. Remember that our average for all 30 oils that I looked at for the 40 degrees Celsius viscosity number was 79.4. I picked one at random. It's a conventional 10W40. Now we're still working with a 40 hot side, but I had to find something that would work. There is no 040 conventional. It doesn't work like that. Anyway, long story short, instead of 79, just call it 80 for talking points. The conventional multi-grade oil was 108. So to put that into perspective, that is a full, 30 points difference basically between a conventional oil. And now at 100 degrees centigrade, there's no difference between the two in terms of actual viscosity, but the viscosity index of the two oils is also considerably different. Even though the viscosity could be practically identical at 100 degrees centigrade, remember if that line is tilted more like this, it's basically like you're losing altitude quickly. And any hotter temperatures, instead of being like, say, go from 14.3 to 13.3, it could go from 14.3 to 11 or 10 in the same temperature change range. So that's why synthetics are so much better. They handle higher heat, they're flowing easier at lower oil temperatures, and you can take them deeper into higher temperature conditions without them breaking down to the point where they're ineffective. By the way, if you're interested to hear how a conventional 40 weight oil did, well, get ready. Again, at 100 degrees centigrade, it's all the same. It's all of the oils are kind of at that pivot number of 14.5, and I'm going to kind of get to that here in a minute. But at 40 degrees, that conventional oil was 196. For lack of a better way of putting it, double the viscosity of the conventional, and at least 3 times what some of the freer flowing 0W40s would flow. That type of oil in really cold temperatures would probably, that engine may not even start, because you'd have to, that starter would be too thick, the oil would be. But that's the difference between the oils. Even though they have the same viscosity at 100 degrees centigrade, they are a world apart when it comes to cold temperature starting. Any of you guys up north know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to that. So let me stop there. Let me check in with you guys. If you've got questions about oil ranges, like, well, what's the J300 specification? If you know what a J300 spec is, you're smarter than me already. Anyway, let me show you that. That's this right here. And that'll tell you what the specs are for the oil itself. In other words, if you're a 20, what does that mean? If you're a 40, what does that mean? What is the actual range? One of the things that I discovered throughout all of that, by the way, is that a 20 versus a 30 is 26% thicker, if you will, has a 26% higher viscosity. And that percentage amount is consistent from 16 to 20 to 30 to 40, and then from 40 to 50, it's 26%, basically the same. So if you've ever wondered, well, why is it like, what's the difference, 20, 30, whatever? It's about 26% thicker going from a 30 weight to a 40 weight, and then from a 40 weight to a 50 weight, it's about it's 23% different there too. So, or roughly 23%. So let me check in with you guys real quick. Supersock saying, good evening, B. From my research, the Pennzoil SRT is hard to beat, so I think I'll be sticking with that. It is hard to beat. It's actually a pretty good oil. The Pennzoil, it's just Pennzoil Platinum, 13 at 100 degrees centigrade with 183 viscosity index. So again, it's a good oil, and it's up near the top. One thing I did want to say, and this is something that I wanted to kind of point out for you guys. I'm going to kind of highlight some of these oils that, like the top, like if you were to use that 14, like that 14 number, that 13.8 number, I can tell you that, let me get this back over here. 8, really 9 of these oils. Castrol Edge Mobil 1, Mobil 1 FS, Pennzoil Platinum, Castrol Edge Turbo Diesel, Shell Helix Ultra, Triax Mag 1, any of the A3 B4s basically. What you can almost think of those as a 0W35. I know that that's obviously going to ruffle feathers and whatnot, but if you look at the viscosity range, when you've got 12.7 with Castrol Edge all the way out to a Redline oil, which by the way has a 15.4 viscosity, it's a 0W40, 15.4 viscosity out at 100 degrees Celsius with an impressive 190 oil viscosity index. That will give you kind of the range that you're playing with. I would say that the Redline and Champion, by the way, is Champion Modern Muscle, and Amsoil Signature, also high up there near that 15 point number. Those would be almost like 0W, you don't want to say 45, but it's that the thicker range of what a 40 would be. So just to give you an idea that Pennzoil Platinum at 13.0 is very, like if you're to really put it on a scale, and I showed you guys that SAEJ 300 chart there. The maxes are 12, the minimum is 12 and a half to even be considered a 40. This is at 100 degrees, by the way, Celsius. The minimum is 12.5 to be considered. The max for a 30 weight is 12.49 at 100. So you can see there's some gray area in there where you can say, well, yeah, it's a 30-ish. It's almost like it's a 35, and that's why I say that. The max, by the way, is 16.29 at 100 degrees Celsius. So anyway, just to give you guys an idea, that's where that oil falls in line. Now, why a 40 weight? Why a 13 at that place? The Hellcat from the factory, if memory serves me correctly, that thing will run, and the 392s are the same way. And I know the 5.7 is like this, but the 5.7 uses 0.20. We're talking about the 392 really in the Hellcat here for a minute. Those vehicles will run 220, 230 oil temperature. Well, remember that we're looking at 100 degrees Celsius, which is 212. By the way, the reason why it's 212, that's why you'll see your oil temperature is usually hovering above that number. That's the boiling point of water. And the idea is that if the oil is above that temperature, then it will boil the water out so that you don't have water contamination. You don't have any condensation contaminating the oil at that point. So that's why that number. Just if you've ever wondered, now you know. But anyway, the hotter the oil gets, the more it's going to thin out. And if you are at 212 degrees Celsius, a 13 viscosity, then at this viscosity index, you're projected to be, say, a 10 viscosity at 225 or 230 degrees. Let's just, using some random numbers here, but something you can kind of relate to based on what you're working with. The weird thing about oil is that almost every single time I've looked at the specs for a particular car and what oil that they recommend, and then you look at the oil temperature that those cars run at, the viscosity is almost always 10, which is funny, but that's just how it works out. Once they get up to very full operating temperature, at least an operating temperature that's going to take up probably 90% of what that vehicle is going to be dealing with on the regular, that 10 viscosity is practically a universal standard across all manufacturers, it seems like, except for the cars that are running the 0.20 or whatever. And that is a kind of a subject for another day, but why would you want to run 20? I wouldn't in a boosted, and I would choose not to do it in a high performance NA application. But if you've got an engine that is just kind of steady state running all the time, you don't need a super crazy oil film even though viscosity and the weights and all that don't necessarily mean anything about film strength. But that would be the reason why. Something that doesn't see wide open throttle a lot, you're looking for efficiency, that's where that oil can really shine. It can manage, some hits of wide open throttle. I would just say that it's just not something that I would beat on like on a racetrack or something like that. Anyway, I know there's a lot of information here. I'm trying to get you guys the information and not like, saturate you, because there is a lot. But let me check in with you guys. Oh, Chase saying he got power to the motor, tried to crank last night. Awesome. Sovereign's asking, what do you think about Quaker State and Motorcraft? So they're all going to be about the same. Motorcraft is probably made by Warren or Valvoline or somebody. The private label stuff. Warren, by the way, the manufacturer Warren makes a lot of the private label stuff that's out there. So just know that coming into it. You know what? Quaker State didn't even come up on the radar, but I'd be willing to bet that it's going to fall somewhere. As long as it's a full synthetic and it fits in the range of 0W40, you're going to be good to go with it. I can promise you, because I looked at so many different oils, and I mean, there were some that stuck out with me. So let me do this real quick. Let me put these manufacturers back in alphabetical order. Redline. And Redline was one because a lot of guys were saying, well, yeah, Redline's the best oil you can buy. Redline is a really, really good oil if you are racing your car. It's got a very high viscosity index of 190, which is nearing the top of the list for these guys. But 15.4, that viscosity sounds high. But if you're racing the car, especially open track, you'll find that if you're at 220, 230 degrees oil temperature, that 15.4 is probably going to look more like 14.0, maybe 13.8. So it would manage high temperatures really well. Prolonged high temperatures, I should say. But you get into some of these like, the Royal Purple. Seems to show up pretty good on a technical data sheet, although I've heard some people not really having great results with Royal Purple. So again, it's all in the ad pack, and I can only go off of what these data sheets will show. But Mobile One typically does really well. The regular Mobile One FS, basically it's the European version, the stuff that you're going to find, is right there, literally right next to Pennzoil in terms of viscosity index, viscosity at 40 and 100 degrees Celsius. But, Lucas Oil has a little bit lower viscosity index than I thought they would, 173. Not that it probably matters all that much. But Lucas oils typically have lower viscosity indexes. Castrol A3B4 oil has pretty high viscosity indexes, but it needs to, because it comes in the lower range of what these 0W40s would average at 100 degrees Celsius. But so does Mobile One and Pennzoil. So it's like, it starts to get confusing, especially when you start diving into this, because it gets just absolutely nuts. And I mean crazy when you get into some of this stuff. Gary, thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Saying love the great info and live chats. Much appreciated. Thank you, brother. Appreciate that a lot. So hopefully, if you've got a question, ask it. I want to make sure that I'm answering some questions for you guys, but at the same time, I don't want to overcomplicate this. The bottom line is, obviously, first and foremost, run what the manufacturer tells you to run in terms of the viscosity. But be on the lookout with these different oils when it comes to, you know, what the use of that product or what the use of your vehicle is going to be. But again, thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Let's see. You get back over here. Hang on just a second. Let me check in with you guys because I've been yammering on quite a bit. But hopefully, Sovereign, that helps you, brother. Oh, Richard's saying they're running 550 with the VMP supercharger. Probably a good idea. Someone's saying Pennzoil Platinum, I think, is made with natural gas. Yeah, there's some that are, there's like a derivative of natural gas that they use. It's part of how they get their base oils, and I have no clue on how that stuff works. Let's see, Sav's asking, can I ask you something? Sure. Freedom unit's the best kind of units. The only kind? It's the only kind of units that ever been to the moon. How about that? Oh, Doc saying, been busy, haven't been ducking and dodging. No, it's all good. So we're saying, hit that like. One thing I will say this, guys, when it comes to like the cold weather number, I didn't really mess with that too much, and I'm sorry, I forgot to kind of mention this earlier. I'm only looking at 40 degrees Celsius and 100 degrees Celsius, which is 104 degrees and 212 degrees. The reason why I didn't look at the W number, which is the cold number, if you will, is, so let me explain what that means first and foremost, and what the two numbers mean. All it means is what the cold number is what the oil acts like at, I think it was 0 degrees Celsius, if I'm not mistaken. It's what the oil acts like at that temperature. So at very cold temperatures, a 0W40 would act like a 0 weight, which is, in essence, it's the same liquidity, the same viscosity as water, by the way. That's what it's based on. But it's got the same flow ability as water would at like that, or not, well, I'm sorry, the oil has a flow that is very fluid, in other words, at that low temperature. A 10W40, for example, would have the same flow as a 10 weight oil would have at that very low temperature, which is to say, in this case, 108 would be its viscosity if we're going off of the example that I was given of the conventional Castrol GTX 10W40. So you can see it's not 10 viscosity, it's acting like a 10 weight oil, and I use weight just because that's the accepted parlance when you're talking about oil, right? A 10 weight oil at that low temperature, say 32 degrees, is going to have a viscosity of 108. Whereas a 0 would have a viscosity of around, say, what did I say the averages were? 80? So quite a bit of difference in terms of flowability. But the reason why I didn't really dive into that is because all of these oils are 0W or 5W, which basically means they're the same, in essence, flow characteristics at low temperatures. So, but that's what that means. It doesn't mean that the oil is a 10 weight. It means that it flows like a 10 weight at that temperature. At the same time, the 40, the hot number, all that means is that it flows at higher temperatures the way that a 40 weight oil would flow if it were that temperature. And that's why I wanted to illustrate, again, the conventional oil references, which are these guys right here. I wanted to show that so that you could say, oh, okay, so they both flow basically the same, 14.3, 14.5 at that 212 or 100 degrees Celsius number, but down low, there's a significant difference. And a 40 weight oil at that low temperature has a viscosity of, what did we say, 196? Jeesh. So that's why we have multi-grade oils. And that's what that means when we're talking about multi-grade versus an SAE, which is just a straight grade of oil, and then how that compares to the conventional of the same kind. So hopefully that helps that as well. The other thing is you can run, the rule of thumb when it comes to oil is that you can run usually a 0.30 if your car recommends a 10.30. And the reason for that is because the zero number viscosity is going to be lower than the 10 viscosity, for example, at that lower temperature. They're going to end up at the same viscosity once the oil is warmed up. But the engine will have already been able to experience or see the lower viscosity of the zero oil at startup. The thing is that you don't want to run a higher number than what's recommended. So it typically, if you've got an engine that it's recommended a 0W20 and you run a 10W50, there might be some problems there because clearancing and everything else, that the engine is expecting a thinner oil than what you're offering to it. So especially when you're dealing with synthetics, the rule of thumb is you can always go lower in viscosity on your W number as long as you're staying the same at your second number, that higher temperature number, and you'll be absolutely perfectly fine there. And you'll have an oil that can manage higher temperatures anyway, if we're talking about conventional versus synthetic. Robert's saying, "Sub B, Robert, Wisconsin." What's up, Wisconsin? Where did you get your performance spoiler? I got my performance spoiler through Mac Hike Dodge here in Houston, Texas. Summer saying, "I switched to high mileage 530 partial synthetic now." So interesting thing. So Summer's talking about the high mileage. High mileage oil, just so you guys know, is roughly, when you look at the specifications of the 100 degrees Celsius number, it is typically 10 to 15% higher viscosity once you get to that warmed up portion. You will find that the extended service, or in this case, the high mileage oils, almost always are between 10 and 15% higher than their regular oil brethren. Okay, so let's say you've got a 0W40 full synthetic Mobile 1, and then you've got like the high mileage version. If the 0W30 or the 0W40 has a 100 degree centigrade viscosity of say 12.9 or 13, it's almost positive that the high mileage version of that is going to be, and I said 10%, what I actually meant is 1 to 1.5 points higher, is going to be 14-ish viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius versus 13. So at least 1 point higher, if that's actually a better way to put that. So fun fact, if you will. Chuck saying, 5W20 Pennzoil full synthetic has been my oil for the shakers since the first service. Good stuff. And by the way, I didn't get into the 20s, although I can tell you that at 100 degrees Celsius, the viscosity of that oil is 9.29. So it's right there in that 10 range that you would typically look for at 212 degrees. So just kind of a thing there. And by the way, the 5.7, from my experience, I don't really ever see oil temperatures over 220 degrees, give or take, and that would put it well within that 0W20 viscosity range, the familiarity, if you will. But for the 392 and the Hellcat, is when they're stocked, you'll see temperatures of 220 minimum in some cases, 230, 235. I've even heard of guys seeing 240 and other folks saying, yeah, they've seen it too. So again, that's why I was basically focusing on that. But that's why the manufacturer will say, okay, well, we know we can do a 20 in the 5.7, but we probably don't want to do the 20 in the 392 or the 6.2. Ripped his in with the flex. I like it. Someone say molasses oil. Yeah, any of the SAE. Sovereign's checking in with Dr. Diff. Ferg saying, what's cooking, B? Got the flex. I like it. Rift is asking, I heard it was not good to change oils after using one for a while in your car. Is that true? That is absolutely false. Big time false with a capital F. There is absolutely no reason for that, except there's always exceptions to the rule. If you're breaking an engine in, I would say go with a conventional oil, mainly because it has a lower lubricity than synthetics. It'll allow a little bit easier break-in. I know that on Foxy is an old school 351. That car I don't think is broken in yet. I'll be honest with you. And that was a brand new short block in that thing. And it burned oil. I think that engine's probably got 15,000 miles on it, maybe 20,000 miles. It actually has less miles on it than my Hellcat does. And I would be willing to bet that it is just now actually getting broken in, and it's been run on Mobil 1 since it was originally installed in that car. Let's see. Rift is clapping. Dr. Diff and Rift Sovereign are hanging out. I was going to call you Ards. Ards saying thank you for the good info on the synthetic oils. Absolutely. Hopefully I can help. Oh, Dr. Div saying he likes the 1040. Very good. He's saying he likes the AMSOIL. Let's take a look at AMSOIL real quick. So AMSOIL, kind of an interesting oil, AMSOIL is. So if you look at the three different oils that I sampled, AMSOIL AFL 5W40, AMSOIL Euro EFL, which is a 040, and the AMSOIL Signature. That's these guys right here. If you notice, not talking about the EFO, but if you look at those guys right there, the ones that are highlighted, you'll notice something interesting. AMSOIL trends in the higher viscosity range pretty much across the board. They're higher than average on the 40 and on the 100C, which means that they'll do well in high temperature conditions. So a good looking oil. Viscosity index is right there with everybody else in terms of, you know, what you would expect out of a synthetic. And to that point, so AMSOIL I think is always shown to be a PAO, which is a group 4, and it is, you know, again, right up there with all the very best. I believe that's how AMSOIL is one of the few, if I remember correctly, that was actually showing, hey, look, we are a group 4 oil. But strangely enough with that, if you notice, just because it's a group 4 does not necessarily mean it's going to have a far and away better viscosity index. It's the additive pack and everything else. But again, in this situation, the conditions of that AMSOIL being able to manage high heat are pretty good. So that means that, you know, that might be a good idea for a turbo application. Although I will say that because turbos, unless you've got a pump actively pumping oil through the turbo and into the sump, whatever sump it is, you're going to want something that moves pretty quickly, but turbos heat up oil pretty fast too. So there's always that. Red Dog saying, Tim Bowes never talk about oil again. I like it. Just kidding. Saying thanks, really thanks for the info. You bet. Hey, listen, I know that it gets a little bit weird and it just kind of gets boring and monotonous hearing about oil, but I got to tell you guys, I get a lot of questions about this, and the real answer to oil, if I'm being honest with you, is this is how you do it. you go to the store when your car hits about 4,000 to 5,000 miles. You walk into the store, you buy however much synthetic of the version that you need for your car that you're going to need and a filter, and you change it. And if you do that, you'll do great. Now, if you're going to ask, well, what about the extended service oils? Which is and Red Talks never talk about oil again. No kidding, right? But reminds me of a conversation though about, I don't ever want to talk about oil again. One of the guys that I was talking about with this, and some of these guys didn't want me to mention names or where they're at, but long story short, this guy, that's all he does is talk about oil for a living. Like, this dude works in the industry. And you talk about a guy that never wants to talk about oil again. But the funny thing about him is he goes, look, oil itself doesn't break down. It's not the oil that goes bad. It's the additive pack that gets consumed. You have things like total base numbers. You want to talk about really diving deep. So you have a TBN, which is a total base number. That's in essence how basic or acidic the oil is. And what you need is a certain amount of a base number to manage some of the acids that are created during the process of all this stuff running. The base neutralizes that. You've got, all of those numbers are very consistent though throughout all of these products. So don't ever hang up on that when you're looking at the name brand known value, if you will, synthetics. All of them have good TBNs. All of them have good flash points. All of them are going to fall within the range of the viscosity index that you're looking for a synthetic oil. There really isn't a bad one, but you got to stick with the ones that are going to work for what you're working with. Mike's just saw Mike's question about what about Redline? People swore by it. So Redline, I did look at one oil from Redline, and it is on the higher end of the viscosity range and has a very high viscosity index. So that tells me that it's the base oil is real high quality, and it can manage high temperatures really well. Now again, it's the additive pack that you're going to have to remember is the consumable part of the oil. In fact, when you recycle the oil, when it's recycled, what they do is they just basically clean it up and refine it. That's it. They just refine the stuff to go, okay, it's like sifting, if you will, and certain types of oil, the base oils will separate, and they refine it. They do refinery stuff to it. Anyway, but that's how they do that. And it's the additive pack that has to be then put back into the oil as a consumable portion of that oil. So just so you know, it's funny, the oil itself doesn't particularly break down when you're talking about a synthetic. It's the ad pack that ends up being the thing that failed. But thanks, Red Dog, I appreciate that. Let's see. Hang on just a second. Eric's asking, what is the difference between Pennzoil Platinum and Ultra Platinum? I've been running the Ultra on my charger, but I have to special order it. Regular Platinum I can get at the local parts store. I will tell you this, if they are both synthetic, then they are both going to fall within the same ranges. What I found, and again, I kind of flew all over the place trying to look at different oils for the 0W40 range, but the Platinum versus the Ultra Platinum, I was looking at the Platinum because that was the one that was the first one that popped up, and it was the one that was readily available. And when you're looking at a specific viscosity range, if it is a name brand and it is a synthetic, it's not going to have this real wide range between one and the next. There could be, instead of like Platinum could be 13.0, Ultra Platinum could be 13.5 viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius. Is that going to make or break or change your world in any particular way? ain't gonna. And if you, as long as you're changing the oil regularly, and some folks will have their own opinion, and chances are we're all right, but I have a number, and that number is I make sure that I have oil ready to go at 4,000 miles, and I don't let any of my vehicles go above 5,000 miles between oil changes using full synthetic. I know some guys like to carry it further. They don't have any problem doing it. I just am a nut for changing oil, and I change oil every 6 to 9 months, whether the vehicle needs it or not. The longest anything will go in the fleet between oil changes is a year. And that's literally if it's just never driven, or it's, when it is driven, it's driven for, a decent amount of time, like the Camaro. That oil, all I'm doing is consuming a TBN on that thing. In other words, the base number, if you will. If anything, I mean, it's just not being affected. So, let's see. But hopefully that answers your question, Eric. It's whatever difference that there is, as long as they're both synthetic, is not going to change your world very much at all. Rick is asking, what about oil filters? He likes the SRT filter, which I do too. In fact, I got to pick some more up tomorrow or Monday. Or Royal Purple filters. So I didn't really look at filters too much, but I can tell you that the filters that I use are Bosch, and let's see, I use Bosch, SRT is my go-to filter, by the way, and Wix. Those are the three that I use the most, and they're all actually pretty good. You can have a 10 micron, 40 micron, 20 micron, whatever it is, as long as your oiling system is healthy. In other words, you don't have something wrong with your oil pump or something like that, to where you're just not getting flow, or in fact, if there's something wrong with your oil pump, you shouldn't be driving it anyway. And you would know it because you wouldn't have any oil pressure. Oil pumps, by the way, are just little positive displacement pumps, much like a little root supercharger in a way. And but what they do is just move fluid. So I don't know that you could have a bad oil pump unless the rotors were worn out. Anyway, off on a tangent. All the filters are actually not bad. The only ones that I know of that are no good are the cheap Frams, and that's because they use cardboard in the filter in areas where you really ought to have metal or at least plastic, and they're thin. I've actually collapsed a Fram. In fact, I had it on the Instagram at one point, where I was removing a Fram and it just literally disintegrated when I went to take the thing off, which was a treat. So anyway, it is what it is. But the cheaper the oil filters don't go that route. I like Mobil 1 makes a good oil filter too, by the way. So any of the premium brand name filters are all going to work really, really well. Sinister Red Eye is asking, how did AMSOIL rate? So AMSOIL, the ones that I looked at, again, were the AFL, the EFO, and the AMSOIL signature, and they did fairly well. The AFL 5W40 had one of the lower viscosity indexes, which I don't really know. A lot of the 540s, by the way, have low viscosity indexes. And a lot of times you would associate that with a diesel, but the B3 or A3 B4 oils, which are 5W40, which I don't know how they're 5W40 because most of them look like 040s. Anyway, it's beside the point. AMSOIL did really well. They have a higher viscosity at the high temperatures. With the AMSOIL signature, which is probably the one you're most familiar with, being 14.8, rating kind of at the higher scale. With the AFL 5W40, if it matters, or the EFO oil, if it matters, being in the lower scale at 13.3 at that 100 degrees Celsius number, basically right there with the Pennzoil Platinum and the Mobil 1 full synthetic. Chuck's asking, is there much of a difference between full synthetic and synthetic blend? If you think of the, so remember we were talking about that 10W40 where its 40 degrees Celsius number was 108.3 as opposed to like that 80 that we were talking about, that much lower number. Go right in the middle. It's like a 90 and it's got lower viscosity indexes. Typically those oils are going to be around 150 on a viscosity index. So it is just barely getting you into the door. As a matter of fact, if you look at, here you go. So group 2 and group 3, these are some base oil notes right here. If you look at that group 3 number, it's got to be a group 3, which in, at least in the US, will be the lowest tier of a synthetic oil. Has to be over 120. Most of them are going to be at about 150 on a group 3 at the actual lowest, and so a blend may be a higher VI, viscosity index oil mixed with a really good conventional. So you might see that thing around 150-ish, and that's kind of the target number. But you can see them, you know, like that conventional is 133, and that's that GTX conventional. I don't think you'd see it that low, but again, 150 would be up there, and that's not that bad. Mike G saying, howdy, nerds. Rip saying, howdy. Damn, wait, what? X is laughing. X is asking, X45 saying, would a muffler delete with resonators keep the drone to a minimum? Yes, it would definitely help. If you're going to do a, guys, if you're going to do a reso delete, either keep your mid muffler delete, keep the resonators if you don't want that thing to just make, it's neato mosquito, and nobody wants to admit when it starts to get on their nerves. They will force themselves to live with it for 6 months or so, and then they're looking for a cat back quickly because it just starts to sound bad. So yes, keep the resos, or go with a 3-inch race bullet as opposed to doing a full muffler delete. Do a 3-inch race bullet and then do a race bullet at the rear, and that combination sounds really good. Someone saying, didn't know that. Yep. Mike saying, that's what I did, but opted for vibrant resos in the middle. Exactly. And kept the stock resos in back. Sounds good. Yep, that does sound good. Dr. Div's hanging out with Sovereign. Thanks again, Red Dog. I appreciate it, buddy. DMA got the flex, saying, do you have any experience or opinion of Motul 8100? It just so happens I have Motul on here. And Motul, actually, the Motul 8100, I've got two different. I've got X-Clean and I've got Motul 8100. It's actually a really good oil, the 8100 X-Max is. As a 0W40, let me show you that it's these two that are highlighted right there. So hopefully that helps you see. And at some point you may have to go back and just freeze this. But I'll read them off to you. At 40 degrees, we're going to talk about the 8100 max here. At 40 degrees Celsius, it's at 76.2. And it is at 13.5 at 100 degrees Celsius, which puts it, as far as specifications for oils that you might be familiar with, I mean, it's almost identical to what Amsoil Euro EFO is. All the way across the board. Amsoil Euro EFO is a 74.4, where the Motul is a 76.2. It's the same. 13.3 versus 13.5, the same. And 182 versus 184 on a viscosity index, again, the same. So really good looking oil, and you know, would be something that would be a, and a Motul, we used to use Motul in the motorcycles too, so that's where my experience comes from with Motul. I'd have absolutely no problem running that in anything. Good stuff. One bad Z1 saying, I have an old 2000 M5 with 166,000 on it. Calls for Castrol TW10W60. So that's all I've ever used in it. However, it's hard to find and very expensive. I'm just afraid to try anything else in it. Main thing is look at the technical data sheets. And by the way, a 60 weight oil is going to put you, and I'll put this up here for you, brother. Look at that SAE J300 scale. That's this one. See when it starts to act right. There you go. That's this guy right here. And that will show you what the viscosities are that will work in that heat range. So you might find that, there's a 50 weight floating around out there. Amsoil could have one, or, anybody could have one that would be somewhere around that 23.5 viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius that 60 is going to be calling for. But the lowest number on that is 21.9. And I would be willing to bet that, there's some 50 weight oils that would probably work for you in that respect. I just don't know off the top of my head which one would. Oh, Sambo's asking your opinion of Mobil 1 Sin versus Pennzoil Ultra Premium. I'll tell you this. Pennzoil Ultra Premium, if you really want to nerd out, probably has a better base oil than the Mobil 1 does. But let me just show you this. It'll be the two that are kind of highlighted darker. Mobil 1 Full Synthetic and Pennzoil Premium. Right there, the darker. You can't see that, can you? Anyway, it's the two that are in green. The reason why they're green is because they're easily available commercially. Those two oils are practically identical in terms of performance. And again, if you want to get into like flash points and things like that, the flash point is all going to be about the same. There's not really anything separating flash points for all 30 or 35 or whatever number, however many there were of these oils that I was looking up. So that, the comparison between the two, again, 71 versus 72, Mobil 1 versus Pennzoil Platinum, 12.9 versus 13.0, again, the same. And viscosity indexes of 185 for Mobil 1 versus 183 for Pennzoil. I was kind of surprised about that. I figured Pennzoil Platinum or any of the Pennzoils would be high on the viscosity index, or at least I had assumed that they would be. But the reality is that they came in, basically almost middle of the road in terms of viscosity index. And again, viscosity index, I know I'm throwing terms around here a lot. Viscosity index is the oil's ability to maintain viscosity as the oil gets hot. The higher the number, the better the oil is perceived to be. I know a lot of guys, when I was asking questions and talking to the guys that are really, listen, let me tell you something. The guys that are really into oil are really into oil the way that anybody in the world is really into anything. I'm just saying. I got schooled up on some stuff. Let's just put it to you that way. And it was, you bang, bang, it's like that. It's like, oh, shit. Oh, hey, time out. I'm just trying to learn here. It's like, you know enough, but you don't know the right enough. Shit. So anyway, for everybody that I talked to and everybody that was, confirming some stuff that I figured that I knew, thank you. Thank you for your aggressive thank you for your aggressive education. Anyway, hopefully that answers that question. They're practically identical. With what I would consider a better base oil to be, I would have, I guess, considered the Pennzoil to have a better base oil. But again, they're both performance-wise, no difference. Mike saying, great explanation. Thank you very much. Rich saying, other than changing your oil more often, is there anything else you should change when you're using ethanol? Not really. You need to just know that ethanol is going to be harsh on everything that it touches. So fuel pump, fuel lines, fuel injectors. Really the worst thing you can do is allow ethanol to sit for any real length of time. That's really when it seems like that product starts to gel up or gum up. If you've got a carbureted contraption, it is way exacerbated with a carbureted application. But with fuel injection, the main thing is just to make sure you're driving the vehicle and that you're turning the fuel in the tank. In other words, you're consuming that fuel on some regular basis. You don't want to let it sit in the tank for, 2, 3, 4 months at a time. That's probably not going to be advisable. There's probably enough with E85, there's probably enough gasoline in E85 to stave off corrosion. Like, it's not going to be an immediate thing, but over time it will get bad. So just know that coming into it. And as far as anything else, I mean, no, that's really it. Oh, Mike's asking, would you mind putting up the SRT oil filter part number for a 22 Hellcat? I can tell you right now. I can tell you. Hey, somebody write this down and put it in here for Mike, please. And I'll give you guys the part number. Or let me do this first. Let me do this. I know. Here's one of them right here, because you guys know I keep these things in stock. So there is the part number. And I've actually got it written up here too. 050-38041 Alpha Alpha. And that's your part number. So hopefully you can screenshot that. Comes in a box that looks like this. It says Mopar, and then the filter itself looks like that. You'll see the SRT logo, all that good stuff. So anyway, hopefully that helps you out. Again, 050-38041 Alpha Alpha. All right. I just realized this thing was backwards. Hopefully when it plays back, it'll be the right way. Mike saying, fun fact about Wix versus Wix SP is the micron rating is slightly less efficient in the XP to allow for longer oil change intervals. Interesting. Oh, and Rift has got it up right there. So hopefully that helps you. Rift's hanging out with Mike Hawk. Brando's asking, at what age did you buy your first house? I was 25-ish. 25 or 26 when I bought my first house. Someone's saying, eat that corn before it eats your car. Absolutely. Rift has it on the nose. Oh, yeah. Nailing it with the part number. So, yep. And again, I don't know who makes this filter. In looking at it, it looks like a Bosch filter, if I'm being honest. And I don't have a Bosch here to compare it to. Do you have a Bosch? I don't think I do. But it might be a Bosch. It seems like it would be a Bosch. Anyway, so more oil fun facts. So again, let's kind of review, because there's again, we had a lot we were going over. In terms of the thinner versions of a 0W40, all of the commercially available oils, and again, I'll list these out, but Castrol Edge 540, which is an A3B4, that's a Euro spec oil, good stuff. Mobil 1 full synthetic, Pennzoil Platinum, and Valvoline 0W40 are all going to fall in that lighter spectrum of a 0W40, with Pennzoil Platinum, Mobil 1, and Castrol Edge all being basically the same in terms of viscosity at 40 degrees Celsius and then viscosity at 100 degrees Celsius. All three of them have very good viscosity indexes. Castrol Edge has the highest at 187. By the way, I ain't getting paid by anybody to say this, but I have heard from a source that is very reputable that Castrol, in terms of base oils and how they work their blends, is probably the best on the list, or one of the best on the list. I'm sorry, that was for the 5W40, but here's the funny thing. So y'all, asking about 5W40 versus 0W40, the first two are Castrol A3B4 oils. One of them's a 5W40, the other's a 0W40, and look how close they are. And they're both rated the same. They're both a 5W40. But the reality is that they're kind of the same. There's one other kind of a fun fact thing that I didn't really look at because it didn't apply, was the 150 degree, which is, what is that, like 300 degrees, 340 degrees, whatever it is. I didn't really look at that number because if your oil temperature is up in that range, you got problems. But the number that's way up there, by the way, the viscosity is 3.5 to 3.7, and oils that are a 5W40, I think, have to meet 3.7. No, I'm sorry, 10W40 and 10W anything oils that are full synthetic. There was like a 3.7 versus 3.5. There's all these different charts, by the way, that I was going over. A lot of it got, it was kind of like learning a new language in a way. But the Castrol were actually the thinner. And really, of those, I would say one of the, so let me go through some hold up. Chuck, damn, bro, don't know what to say. Thank you very much is, I guess, where I should start. Thank you for the C note, brother. I appreciate that. Boom, C note for B. Question: I rotate between 91 and 93 octane in my shaker. We're running higher than optimized octane foul spark plug tips like additives do. Absolutely not. So there's nothing that will foul your plugs in that respect, because there's nothing in the fuel that is, in essence, not a fuel or a detergent. The products and the additives in commercially available gasoline, like what you'd find at Shell, Valero, any of the tier 1 fuels, they all have to meet certain engineering specifications, and they do not have components to them that would inhibit or hamper the functionability of any emissions equipment in the vehicle or any portion of the combustion process. So what does that mean? Okay, so that means that there's no MMT in the fuel, there's no other product in the fuel that would cause the gasoline to not combust fully if it's at its Stoich number, which is 14.7 for gasoline, 14.1 for E10, like a true E10 that we have today. So that the fouling of the plugs would come from a rich mixture, and that's where you have an overabundance of carbon build up around the ground strap and the electrode. But because your car is electronically fuel injected and it's constantly monitoring air fuel ratios, if it feels like it needs to pull timing for any reason or add timing, it will, or pull fuel or add fuel, it will. One thing to remember, though, is that the fuel that you're using is extremely clean from an engineering point of view. Again, it has to be able to work well long term, and it has to comply with a host of regulations that the vehicle manufacturers have for the fuel to work with those vehicles. And a lot of that is doesn't clog up the catalytic converters, will not damage oxygen sensors, doesn't damage or affect spark plugs in any way, will not affect valve seats or valve sealing, will not affect fuel injectors, gumming up the fuel injectors or anything like that, fuel pumps, doesn't eat up the fuel lines, etc. So no, it will not hurt it at all. Now, the real question is, will it actually help it? So 91 and 93 are really good fuels if you're hammering on the car a lot. The reason why I say they're really good fuels for hammering on the car a lot is for obvious reasons. You don't want it to knock, obviously. Its resistance to knock is really what you're looking at. But what about the fuel quality? What if you just have a bad tank of 89? Well, then it's going to act maybe like 87 or 86. We've run into that before, especially on the dyno, and you guys have seen me with the fuel testing and, I'm data logging fuel quality. Here he goes again with his, nerding out on fuel quality. But it's a thing that I do. So if I'm looking at that, I can tell you that I've had bad 93 in an application where octane is extremely important. The reason why I always suggest running 91 or 93 in any performance application or any time that you need to have octane or knock resistance is to hedge your bets against poor fuel quality. So for example, for your shaker, 89 octane may be optimal, but a bad tank of 89 or a bad tank of 91 might be 89, or a bad tank of 93 might be 91 or 90. And so you're hedging your bets downwards to make sure that you have an absolute known value, high quality tank of fuel that you can thrash on and not have any issues with. The last thing you want to do is try to ever cheat fuel octane down. Another thing that you'll notice is the higher the octane fuel, it doesn't mean that the fuel burns any slower. It's only a resistance to knock, and that resistance to knock is based around a certain amount of additives that are in the fuel. And there's a lot of them. They have a lot of really big words that nobody on the planet can pronounce. But the reality is that it's just like oil in a way in this respect, where the performance of the fuel and its knock resistance is heavily tied to that add pack that's in the actual gasoline itself. So that's why using a top tier fuel is so important. It's the cleanest. It's a very well known value when it comes to knock resistance, which is to say that it is a very well known octane rating. And understanding that, especially with a higher performance car, will allow you and afford you the understanding that, okay, if I go to Shell, I'm pretty sure that if I get 89 octane, it's going to be a really good 89 octane. If I go to Frank's Bait Shop and Gasoporium down the street, Frank's 89 octane might be a little bit suspect, and you might want to go with the higher octane if that's your only source of fuel for any real length of time. So again, absolutely nothing is going to affect negatively your car by running a higher octane. And just know that it has a lot more to do with the quality of the fuel than it does the number on that little sticker. So hopefully that helps. And man, thank you very much for the overwhelmingly generous contribution, man. I don't even know what to say. Thank you. But I need to hit you up because I've got the new style t-shirts coming next week, and you're obviously getting a couple. So yeah, I'll definitely be reaching out. Hopefully, and I got your size too. I think they're coming in next week. In fact, they're the script. In fact, I'll pull up what they look like. Hang on. Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, new T-shirts are coming. Hang on. Got so into this. Let's see. Bear with me. I'll show you guys what they look like. I use custom ink for the shirts. Hang on. The hell is that shit? Hang on. Let me show you guys what those look like. That's who actually made the old trucking company shirts. Let's see. Oh wait, I can't pull it up because I'm offline. Yeesh. Did I download it? Let me see if I kept a copy of it. Now, well, I'll have to show you guys. You'll see them soon enough. Those shirts are coming in. It's pretty cool. It's more this format, and it just says MCL, and it's Mopar Chat Live, and the font is in audio wave, so it's like what you would expect 80s style audio techno kind of graphic, I guess. Kind of hard to explain, but damn, I wish I can't pull it up. My bad. I'm sorry. But thanks again, man. I really do appreciate that, buddy. So we're saying, holy, Chuck's saying Chuck's best friend and Jimmy Dad's saying shit. Chuck's saying, seems like my 345 is more responsive on 93, snappier throttle, etc. It probably is. So all of the Hemis always seem to be a little bit octane sensitive. I can kind of tell the difference with how my work truck runs between 87, 89, and 93. And I will typically run it on 89 if given the opportunity. And so, yeah, it can be a little bit snappier. One thing that I did notice, I don't know if you guys ever saw the video, it was kind of a weird one-off video that I did. It was like, hey, I'm logging knock retard in the work truck. Like another one of these. Who does this, man? Why would you even? Well, you know, it's kind of how the sausage is made. And what was funny about that one is that I didn't log 93. I need to log 93. In fact, that'll be another one that I do for you guys. Is I'll just log 93 octane, but the truck is always pulling timing. And when I had my older truck, when I did the tune on that thing, I was yanking knock sensor sensitivity out of that thing like crazy. But this thing is just like the old one, and it will pull timing just cruising down the road. It's the knock sensors are real twitchy, and there's a bunch of noise in these things, and so they're always yanking a bunch of timing. It's pretty funny. Car wash power brake. What do you call a boomerang that doesn't come back? A stick. I like it. That's pretty good. Himmy Dad saying, what would it be like if I put 87 octane in my M6 Scat? It would be expensive. No, actually what would happen is the knock sensor voltage in all of the Hemis is actually very sensitive. I mean, it is really, really twitchy. And if you put 87 octane in your car, it would strip mine timing right out of that thing. It would not allow anywhere near full timing on your timing chart. You would probably pull about 5 to 7 degrees of timing, and if not 9 degrees of timing, and you may get a check engine light if you're really getting on it. Now, that being said, if you were to put 87 octane in the car, because you have to remember, knock sensitivity is based specifically on cylinder pressure and load. So think of it like this. If you're just driving it, if you were to take the belt off the supercharger, for example, and just drive the car with no ability to have any boost, aside from being unbelievably slow, it wouldn't really care if it had 87 or 93 octane because there's no compression, right? There's no real load. If you had to get the car from point A to point B, my suggestion would be, yeah, put 87 octane if that's all you can get your hands on for whatever reason, just don't let it go into boost. Just be real careful with the throttle, and it'll get you wherever you need to go. At low loads, the car doesn't know that it has 87 octane in it because the stoichiometric value is identical. Oh, that's something else. Yeah, the stoichiometric value for 87 octane, 89 octane, 93 octane, 91 octane, 86 octane, 85, it's all the same. If it's E10, it's gasoline with 10% ethanol, which means it's 14.10 parts of air per part of fuel. And that's why the difference there was really it was really more like the car doesn't know what fuel is in it. It only knows if there's a problem with knock. So again, in this scenario, you could technically not in boost drive the thing and not have a problem. But if you did put any load on it at all, at about, let's see, at 9.5 to 1 compression, square root of so at about 2 pounds of boost, you would start to see the knock sensors really kicking in. So that'll kind of give you an idea. I mean, just barely tipping into the throttle would probably start the knock sensors freaking out. But that's what it would happen. Chuck's saying my shaker runs a little bit doggier in 87. It probably does. It's pulling timing quite a bit, so I refuse to ever do it again. No. So what's happening with it at that point, you got to remember, you got a 10.5 to 1 engine. And I mean, dude, back in the day, 10.5 to 1 was like a race car. I mean, people like hot street compression ratio for a wedge motor. I mean, all of those things were 10.5 to 1. And that's what we've got now today, just as a normal car. So, I mean, technically, yeah, you can drive it on it, but yeah, my truck drives like crap. On 87 octane, it's funny because I even know the tune on the thing, but yeah, you go to tip into the throttle and it just yanks all kinds of timing with short-term knock retard. It's actually kind of funny. Car Wash is asking, what is a gallon of C12 going for during this mess? I don't know, man. I haven't even priced race gas. I don't. I'd be afraid to ask, to be honest with you. X is in flexing dollars. I like it. Oh, Zephyr's in. Zephyr saying, add Chuck. Yeah, as a fuel tech, B is 100% spot on. There's also always a chance that a mid-grade fuel octane is blended different from even dispenser to dispenser, even on the same site, which is true. And that's why if you stick to 93, you'll always get 93. Hey, Zephyr, I got a question for you. In like on-site fueling, I've got a kind of a running debate with somebody on something. If I pull up to a gas pump and I pull up to the gas pump and I'm on my motorcycle and take the nozzle out, put it in the tank, press 93, how much of the fuel that comes out of that nozzle is 87 or whatever the person used before it's actually 93 octane coming out of the tip? I've always wondered that. Like, is there an amount that comes out that is different than the button that you pressed? Anyway, the reason why I bring that up is I do some quirky things, and one of my race prep stuff. And one of the race prep things, I've got an Exxon station right up the street that is like bellissimo when it comes to fuel quality. But what I'll do is I will fill up a gas can first, like what you would use for like a lawnmower. I'll fill that up first, then I'll fill the tank up, or fill the tank to whatever level I need to fill it to with 93. But I never go from the pump to the car. I always go pump, tank, and then go to the car. Just curious. If you know, I mean, it'd be interesting. I have no idea. Oh, Chuck's saying 3X is me. Yep, Mopar Chat Live will be represented. Be already been to a few car shows. Very nice. Thank you very much. I think I've got 3Xs coming. Now, here's the thing. This is going to be a test run because I think I got 3X. I'm pretty sure I did. But I'm going to see what these look like, and hopefully they print right. There are some changes. There's always like some changes. And the last run I did with Custom Ink was in it's been a while back. So anyway, we'll see what they look like, and if they look good, I'll be pretty stoked. But I'll give these to you either way. I mean, I like them, so, I'll rock them everywhere. KZ1 said, I used to pay about $70 for 5 gallons of C12 2 years ago. No idea now. Yeah, I have no clue. Dr. Diff saying he likes liquid moly. Talking about the oil. Let's see. Did I do liquid moly? I think I did. Yeah, I did. Liquid moly, synth oil energy. Let's see. Liquid moly, synth oil energy. Ranked kind of high on viscosity. Let's see. That's this one that's highlighted. So 14.3, which is pretty good if you need it. Be pretty good for a turbo application if for like a street oil. And 83, so it's high, and it has a good viscosity index of 180, so it's average in that respect. But yeah, good stuff. Chuck saying thank you, Zephyr. Someone saying, like, share, subscribe. Oh, Dr. Differential's got the gas prices. My dad is hollering out to his gas price inflator. Someone saying, oh, good question. Residual fuel in the pump, mixing it with different type of octane. I'd imagine that they have some sort of system that makes the fuel flow back into the tank of origin, which is what I thought too, but you don't know. And so I'm going, I mean, I might as well. It's not hurting anything, and I need gas for the lawnmower anyway, so there's that. Oh, by the way, the saw on a stick is doing great. So for you guys that don't know, one of my neighbors threw away a Ryobi saw on a stick with the boom extension that also had the edger extension that also had 2 weed eater extensions. And it's the 2-stroke. And so anyway, I rescued my rescue saw on a stick, which I'll be using to trim some trees here probably next weekend. So I rescued it, put a bulb on it, and adjusted the fuel line, and that thing fired right up and is a monster. So anyway, the saw on a stick / edger / weed eater that took me about 15 minutes to work on once the parts came in is now a beast. Doc's asking about stickers. I haven't even looked at stickers yet. Zephyr's saying very smart. I guess he's saying about the thing. Typically about half a gallon from the last product used, from the nozzle's interrupt valve all the way to the 3/4 MPT hose, all the way back down to the solenoid valves in the lower panel. Awesome information, my man. Thank you, Zephyr. I appreciate that. So, guys, whenever you're putting fuel in, here's why I asked that. Whenever we would have a car on the dyno, we always said, make sure that you have the car filled up full of gasoline. Don't show up with this thing empty and have me put 5 gallons worth of gas in the thing. If we had to do that, because we had that happen more than once, what was funny is that every once in a while you'd see one just have more knock retard than it should. And I always thought, should we have put like 10 gallons of gas in this thing? Like, what's the deal? Anyway, we're charging them for it anyway. It's not like, we're giving it to them for free. But anyway, instead of throwing 5 gallons of gas, I would, say, okay, I'll put 10 gallons worth of gas. But in my own car, I always do the gas can trick. So, cool. That's awesome. Very cool information to have. Chuck saying, talking to Sovereign, I always wondered about residual runoff from the last driver, but it doesn't seem like it would be enough to affect the 18.5 gallon tank in my Challenger. Good topic question. Yeah. Yeah, for an 18 gallon tank, if you're filling her up from the no, it wouldn't. But again, for like motorcycles where it only has a 5 gallon tank, or you're going to the track and you've already got fuel in the car, but you want to have fuel there with you in a gas can or whatever. You're trying to keep fuel level exact. So when I am testing stuff, let's say I'm testing tires, or I'm testing the throttle body, or I'm testing something, and I want my fuel level to be the exact same because I don't want there to be any weight difference. We're playing in a game here with 12 pounds, which is 2 gallons worth of gas. May not be a difference to some, but it's a difference in general. So anyway, I always did that though. I even had a third tank, and I'd put 2 or 3 gallons in that, fill up my tank, and then fill up the car, or put the right amount that I was looking to do with the car, because I never really trusted it. And I always figured you can't get it perfect. Like it's a non-zero chance that I'm getting 87 in this car plus the other products. So interesting. Okay, cool. Zephyr saying I would at least pump a gallon plus. Very cool. Oh, Sovereign saying he rescued in Milwaukee today. Nice. So the Ryobi is a monster. It's funny, it's a 2-stroke, and it's a Ryobi. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, what that means is that they're kind of choked down. I mean, it's a 2-stroke, but it's a little bit choked down. But I was kind of playing around with it, and once it warms up anyway, it wicks up pretty good. But just like any 2-stroke, it's got to warm up first before it's going to act right. And Sovereign saying, yeah, it wouldn't make much of a difference if if you're filling the tank up all the way. Shift saying, what's up, B? What's up, Shift? Let's see. The cat's out of the third. Let's see. Oh, Dad's saying, I took my Hellcat to the first cruise in the season here. Man, she gets attention. These cars really are special. Oh, and Chuck said, I forgot you mentioned motorcycles, not car tanks. Well, it's really anything. I mean, it could be a motorcycle, could be, something with a smaller tank, or your gas cans if you're carrying fuel with you to maintain a certain fuel load. Yeah, Himmy Dad saying he took his out. It's really special, and yeah, they are. So I took mine out today for a little bit. I've had some thoughts, and talk to you guys about in another live show, but I've had some thoughts about what to do with my car, and the fact that it is stock boost. I don't want to pulley it up. I don't want to do anything like that. And I've had the car now for a while, and it's about as far along as I'm really going to be able to get it. So anyway, I was thinking about some things, and anyway, snuck the car out for a little bit and took her for a drive, and the car just runs so good. And I love having the Scat Pack. Front sway bar on that car. It just, I'm telling you guys, you think I'm making this up, but street mode feels really right in that car. I mean, it's a little bit more compliant now, but it just seems to stick a little bit better. It just feels like the car is a little bit better. In sport mode, you can tell that it's at least got a sport mode that's not trying to snap your vertebrates. Doc's trying to thumb something out over there. I like it. Sarver's asking, what do I think about the new DeLorean? I'll tell you this. I freaking love it. And what I like so much about it, number one, the DeLorean place is like not near here, but it's here in Houston. What I like about the DeLorean is I get that it's an EV. It's a bummer, but I understand why. I mean, you don't have to get an EV emissions tested, right? Plus, it's an easy way to make something really fast. But for whatever reason, I guess because of flux capacitor, I just feel like if you're going to have an electric car, it sure as hell better be a DeLorean. And I just, for what, I don't know what it is. Like sometimes the shoe fits just right. And that's kind of where I am with the electric DeLorean. Like, I get it. It's not going to be the fastest EV out there, but it's plenty damn fast. 0 to 60 in, what was it, 3 seconds? And I can't remember if they had quarter mile shown, but anyway, and it's a good looking car, and I'm excited. I'm real excited to see that car in person. I think that's going to be a really neat car. If you get one, or if anybody out there gets one, if they don't put a freaking flux capacitor looking contraption in that thing, you have to. Jason's been working on some GM and Ford stuff, small engine stuff. Zephyr's saying he always prefers major brands ad packs. In other words, Phillips 66, Shell compared to the non-name like Circle K or even Buc-ee's. What's the data show? Great question. So Buc-ee's, whatever formulation that they have, I can tell you this: I have had great luck with Buc-ee's with naturally aspirated stuff. So there's that. But when it's come to the Hellcat, I've had, it is equivalent to just having a poor quality tank of gas. As a matter of fact, the last tank of Buc-ee's that I had was lousy. Like I was getting knock retard, almost like not like I thought something was wrong with the car, but I was getting knock retard in areas where it should have never had knock retard with the Buc-ee's fuel. But with Exxon, no issues whatsoever. I really don't mess with any other brands just because they're, I've got such great access to this Mobil 1. But yeah, the Buc-ee's that I tried was not good. The Chevron was good, had no issues with that with the Demon. As a matter of fact, all of the testing with the Demon came from a Chevron station. So for 93 octane. And it worked out pretty good. So, but yeah, the Buc-ee's didn't work out so well. But that's what the data showed. Exxon, at least from this station, is super good. Like I'm kind of spoiled by it in a way. Johnson's saying, I wish the 4.7 Dodge had more stuff aftermarket. It's pretty potent for that small of V8. It is. Actually, it's a Mercedes-derived engine. So we're saying, might as well. This could be the company comeback. 3.3. 3.3 is what the 0 to 60. Talking about the DeLorean making it back. And he's saying, totally with you on the DeLorean. Yeah, I just... And dang it, have a little bit of a sense of humor to go along with it too. And that's again why just DeLorean. Like, how is DeLorean not an EV? Like, it would have to be an EV, right? Like, seriously. Anyway. KZ saying he drove his buddy's 1650 last weekend. Heard the 6-speeds don't hold up, but I power shifted 4 gears and that trans shift nice. They do shift nice. And I like the Mustangs. They're like, for you guys that don't know, I used to use Mustangs as work cars. Chuck's saying McFly would be proud. Yes. McFly would be very proud. Sovereign's saying just talk to Video Bob. He'll get you a flux capacitor. I like it. Zephyr's got the hand claps. John saying, yeah, that 4.7 being Mercedes drive doesn't surprise me. Other than Ford, not many full with the overhead cam V8. So, do you remember any of the 470 cars? ML 470, the truck I think had the boxy looking thing had it. Who else had it? What else had it? Anyway, any of those cars that had the 470, that V8, that's the 470. In fact, am I dreaming this up or am I remembering this right? I remember seeing one of them at a machine shop. God, this is a million years ago. And I think it was an older one, and I think it still had Mercedes stamping on the cylinder heads. Again, this is going way, way back though, so. Anyway, getting back to the oil thing, for you guys, look, the bottom line is this. As long as you're buying a name brand oil, it might be one that you've never heard of, but as long as you're buying a synthetic oil, and again, it could be Motul, Redline, Schaefer's is another one. Have you ever heard of Schaefer's? I ain't never heard of Schaefer's. Shell Helix showed out to be really good. The Warren oils, but bottom of the performance spectrum, but again, still very good. Ravenol is another one. Never heard of that one. Very high. By the way, this is the only oil that I had any notes on specifically was the Ravenol. It's Ravenol, Ravenol, SSL, 0W40. It was a 74.4 and a 13.3, which, and a 182 index, which is a little bit less viscosity than the average, and it was significantly better. Well, better enough with viscosity index. Anyway, apparently it's got a high flash point. I can't remember what the number was, but it had a fairly high flash point, probably somewhere in like the 234 range, I think is what it might have been. So maybe worth a look. Again, Motul did really well. I was familiar with that. Mag 1, not 100% familiar with that, but they've got an A3B4 that looks pretty good. Interested where the Lucas stuff fell in line. That was kind of a strange one for me, just with the lower viscosity indexes. But again, doesn't mean really. Maybe it doesn't mean anything. Some of these numbers, by the way, guys, are kind of, and I get it. Guys that are really into oil are going to watch this and just fillet me, and I understand that. But the reality is that all of these oils are actually pretty good, provided that you're not trying to overwork them and overstress them with way too long of a service interval. Changing the oil, keeping fresh product in your vehicle is the key to this. Running whatever the manufacturer suggests as far as viscosity for the load range that you're going to be putting the vehicle through, the temperature range is key. So follow your manual's instructions on that. But yeah, that's going to be the most important part of it. They're all good though. They're all very good. It's ever saying H-Town though too. Your fuels go straight from the refinery to the pump. Yeah, they do. Chuck's asking, didn't the 72 Demon have a supercharger? Negative. The 72 Demon, the largest engine available in the 72 Demon would, I believe, it might have been the 360. I know for a fact the 340 was available. 360 may have been available, but they did not have superchargers. Zephyr say, back to oil, Torco's polymers. Enough said, shots fired. I didn't cover Torco, mainly because I didn't want to accidentally look up the additives, the fuel additives. So, by the way, yeah, the MMT in Torco is the one that was, I think, causing a lot of problems. Anyway, Boostane and Torco always go at each other about that. Oh, John saying, name brand, Mobile 1 Dexos 2 is what I use in my old 4.0 Explorer. I hear it helps on the plastic timing and chain guides. As long as you are changing the oil, that's the most important part of it. They're all going to be good. So yeah, the Dexos is good. That's a GM uh, certification, if you will, if memory serves me correctly on that. So yeah, that one's going to be a good one for you. Mike's liking the Amsoil. Very good. Yeah, Amsoil did well. Like I say, the three I think that made it to the party for Amsoil. Again, Amsoil AFL, which was a 5W40, Amsoil Euro EFO, and Amsoil Signature. So, yeah, all the Amsoils did good. Did good. The EFO, which is the Euro, was right there with what you would expect to see out of like the Pennzoil Ultra Platinum or the Pennzoil Platinum. The other two had a higher viscosity. Oh, KZ1's saying he likes the Klotz oil. I never did use it. John saying I'm debating on what to use on my old K2500 with a 350 TBI. I'm going to mild build that. I would say honestly, man, if it's going to be a mild build and your oil temp's never going to see more than 212, 220, I'd go with like a 030 or a 040. I'd probably go 040 with the TBI motor, but 040, 030 would be perfect for it. Zephyr saying pure oil, Torco, Schaefer's, Motul, Lubriplate, if you know a lab guy. I don't, and that's the thing. Well, I kind of do, but but yeah, so Schaefer's, how did Schaefer's do? I know I got a Schaefer's in here. Schaefer's was interesting. What? Oh, so Schaefer's oil. So I've got a note here. Of all the oils in here, one thing that I liked and was confused by at the same time, so kind of like a chick, right? But what Schaefer's did is they gave a range. So the range on the Schaefer's 0W40, the median number for the high temperature was 14.1. I think it gave 13.7 to 14.3 or something like that. 13.9 to 14.3. The 40 degrees Celsius number, the median number, the average number was 79.8. And I think it was actually more, it was saying it was 81 to, I don't know, 77 or something like that. Anyway, that was the average. But the one number that was flat was the viscosity index, which was 185. So to me, I mean, that was almost the most honest. Is that the best way to put it? It was the most honest looking or sounding specification, because at least it gave a range. I don't know why there's a range there, production variances, but I don't know. Anyway, that's what I found with that. Oh, so Shift is saying he had the same issue, that clunk on his 392 after he changed to the 1320 springs in the front sway bar. Said he lifted the front end and retightened everything. Noticed each side was 2 full turns short on the knuckle, and that fixed it. So interesting. On mine, it was the sway bar end link. And what was weird is that it was one that I didn't mess with. In other words, I didn't try to loosen it or anything. It was the top knuckle, and I just went in there and it was loose, and I grabbed a hold of one end and, came down on the other, and it was kind of not really loose, but kind of loose. But yeah, I mean, I had my hand on it trying to follow. It's like going to feel around everything to see what I could find just by articulating the suspension and just having my hands in there. And that's what I did too. I had to isolate it to find it. John saying, keeping fresh oil in engines performing well, that helps a lot more than people realize. It's everything to keeping an engine running right. Zephyr saying, Genrite off-road. Oh, cool. Has a great Tech Talk video that dives into oil with a hell of an expert. Very cool. And that's the fun thing about this is that, you know, I was talking to guys and, you know, trying to, really what I was doing with mine is I wanted to get the data and then ask some people, okay, so what matters? You know, what can I start to take away? What are the constants? And what am I really looking for? And this, what was funny is that I had kind of broken this down already, and what I had surmised just by, not like I'm like some smart guy when it comes to, I just figured when I was looking at the data on the technical data sheets, a lot of it was very similar. It's why I didn't have separate categories for it, other than to say that flashpoints were very similar for synthetics. And of course, I didn't dive into conventionals or anything else like that. This is just synthetics, and this is just a very like high altitude view of how this stuff works. I can only imagine getting into all the different groups of oil and everything else. Once you start getting into that, this can probably start to look like alphabet soup after a while, which it kind of already did. But I'll have to check out that Genrite deal. That sounds cool, man. Thank you. Oh, one bad KZ saying 71 and 72 Demon had a 340. Okay, cool. His dad had a 71 and a 4-speed. Awesome. Fun car. Hard as hell to find nowadays, too. John saying the K25 is going to get revved on. It's my current toy. I got it for $1,000 from my parents. They needed money. I wanted the truck. We cut a deal. So yeah, I love my C20, man. That thing is awesome to drive. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that truck, man. So here's it's not gonna get LS swapped. The problem is the 400 small block that's in it is really worn out, but the thing fires right up and it runs great. It's just got an amount of blow by. Let's just put it that way. But the thing fires up and runs and drives and does smoky burnouts and does all of that. So I can't really justify doing any work to it because it just keeps running so good. So I just keep putting oil in it and firing it up and driving it. It just keeps running so good. Oh, Zephyr saying the difference with Schaefer's might have been switching base stocks 2 to 3 or 2/3 mid-cycle of a production lot. Could have been. I have no clue. All I know is that it was the only. Let me see. It was the only one because I did the asterisks and it was the only one that gave a range. So I thought that was worth mentioning if nothing else. The data, the viscosity index alone tells me it's going to be halfway decent, and it is. So, but next on the list, I guess, would be to dive into 030s and 020s and see what those look like. Although I'm pretty sure I'm going to see, aside from, the viscosities being lower, I'd say viscosity index would be about the same, probably. Hey, that's okay, B. My brain is full on specs. Heading out. Catch you on the next one. Good seeing you, brother. Valiant Thor saying, watching from Los Alamos National Laboratory, Office of Chemical Physics Research. Thank you. Very cool. Like saying, random channel surfing. Chuck saying, driving an A-body Plymouth Roadrunner, priceless. Love the older stuff. Oh, Zephyr saying, what I look for is ester 4.5 base stock, quality polymers, ZDDP retention, yep, and decent film strength. Yeah, ester 4.5 is about as high as you can go. You know what's funny is that you didn't see, like when I was going through and looking at, again, this is 35 different oils from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, hold on, 14, 15. I'm running out of, I'm starting, my brain hurts. Like 16 different manufacturers. So 35 oils from 16 different manufacturers. And you know what's weird is that the group number, the actual esters in the mix, you know, because all these are blends of those esters. Most of them are anyway. I never saw that advertised. Like, hey, we're a group 4. You know, this is why we're better. You would think that would be something that you would market as being like a thing that you're doing, but they didn't. So I was confused by that. Okay, so to that point, Zephyr, check this out. So part of the reason why I wanted to dive into this, aside from just being a nerd, and I love nerding, I love this kind of stuff. I wanted to see what the difference was in terms of performance between a group 3, group 4, and a group 5 as it pertains to just the oils in general. So in other words, if I were to pull up Amazon Basics 0W40, I think it's made by Warren. If I pull up that oil, and does it have to say I am a group 3, and then I pull up Lucas oil, and it's a group 4, group 5, and have something like that be marketed out there on a tech sheet. Well, Lucas, I think, shows theirs to be PAO. And, you know, so I'm looking at that going, okay, well, I don't know what a PAO is. I don't know what a PAG is. But I know that these things mean something. So I started to kind of dig in a little bit and found out PAO is a group 4. And I'm going, okay, well, cool. So if I see PAO, that means it has a component of group 4 in it. But what does that mean? So anyway, that's what I started to learn more and more about the oils, is that no matter what base stock was used, I couldn't find a correlation between group 4 and viscosity index. And that was something that was kind of interesting to me. And so the more I kept trying to dive into it, like nothing started to make sense. And, you know, after a while you figure out, oh, okay, really it's the ad pack that makes the difference. Like, it's got to have a good base stock, but it's just like anything else where the additive pack is really what you're looking at. And so anyway, you can imagine how long this took. Like, it's easy just to see the spreadsheet and go, there's a spreadsheet. It's like, and there's a spreadsheet, right? But it took like forever. I'm doing the research. I'm looking up the oils, and I have all these other questions. So I'm like going off in the left field. I'm texting like, hey, what does this shit mean? You know? And so anyway, and it was a lot of fun. It was a neat learning experience. And it was something that, you know, I like some of it I kind of knew, but some of it I didn't really know the right way too. So it was like a re-education and kind of just a fun trip down memory lane at the same time. Someone saying, hit the likes. Zephyr's asking, is a closer viscosity range in essence, let's see, 5W40 better than 0W40? Good question, but I have to answer that twice in a way. So it is not better because there's nothing that necessarily designates a difference between a 540 and a 040. So let me show you this real quickly. This will give you a great look at it. Look at the very first two oils here. Castrol Edge Euro, which is an A3B4 spec. And if you hear somebody say A3B4, it just means that the oil is going to look like this. So I highlighted them. The first two oils are Castrol. The first two oils are top of the list, 0W40. The very second one is a 5W40. And they're identical basically in how they actually perform. You look at the performance at 40 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Celsius, the viscosity index, all of that is very, very similar. 66 versus 69, not that big of a difference. At 100 degrees Celsius, 12.7 versus 12.8, literally zero difference. Viscosity index of 198 versus 187, they're both very high, although the 040 has a higher viscosity index. And so to answer the question again, typically a 040 will have a better viscosity index than the 5W40. And that's what I found with all of these oils. And what I'll do now is I'll show you the viscosity index smallest to largest. Oh, I'm sorry. Viscosity index smallest to largest. And if you notice, of the top 5 oils that come up on that list, or of the first 5 oils that come up on that list, they are all 5W40s that have the lowest viscosity index. So, by that measure, I would say that anything 0W and then insert a number is going to have a better viscosity index. And I would say, therefore, is probably the better oil. Now, that's only if you're basing something based on a viscosity index. I don't know that that's the only way, obviously, to measure if a 5 is better than a 10. And I think that the 5W40 primarily is out there because it may have a bit better viscosity way to the right of the chart. But it's tiny, 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 and hardly even measurable. 3.5 versus 3.7 viscosity at 150 degrees Celsius. And I don't, in fact, 0 and 5W are both kind of in the same chart there. But anyway, that gives you an idea. I would prefer, if I have my preferences, to have a 0 something oil if and when at all possible. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at this again, and there are no, let's see, there's only Castrol Edge is the only 5, and it's an A3B4, is the only 5W30 that made it outside of that grouping of the 5W oils with the lower viscosity index. So that Castrol may be a bit of an outlier. It's probably more like a 0W40. So Chuck said, another awesome show, great topics, and I hope everyone enjoyed as much as me. Catch you on the next show. Keep it pinned to the floor, keep it pinned to the firewall, folks. I'm out. Chuck, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate the contributions, guys. I really do, man. Thank you. That was a huge one, brother. Wow. Thank you very much. That's amazing. I can't even, you kid. Thank you. Oh, Zephyr's saying, I always thought viscosity index was second to polymer consistency after use. I'm really not sure. I can tell you that from what I have seen and the way it was explained to me is that the viscosity index is, if you think of it like this, it's the oil's ability to maintain altitude on its way into the ground, so to speak. It's like its glide ratio, if you will, if you're into airplanes, where the lower that viscosity, or the lower the viscosity index, the more tilted that scale is going to be. So if you're to put like the SAE 40, by the way, I did that one. That one's right here. I just, used it as kind of, I had some barometers. That's these guys right here. If you look at the SAE 40 weight, you'll see it only has a viscosity index of like 96. And in that case, you're looking, it starts off at, 196 viscosity as opposed to 108, with the conventional having a viscosity index of 133. So it's its ability, if you're to chart that, and I did, and I was going to try to get a chart for you guys, and it looked bad, but Anyway, like a Castrol might have a chart that looks like this, okay? And then the worse you get, the more it tilts like this, to where there might be a place in a dot in time where they're pivoting around, and that dot in time is 100 degrees Celsius. It'll all fall into that 14.5, but they start, SAE 40 starts way high and then drops down, whereas the other ones start at a lower viscosity and just kind of maintain that arc, so to speak. Even though it does have a bit of a curve and it's kind of hard really to plot, you can kind of see what it's going to act like. Sovereign saying, bye, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck, again, man. I appreciate that. Chuck saying, smash that like button, folks. Saying later, Sovereign. Let me see something real quick here, guys. And again, Chuck, thank you very much, man. I really do appreciate it. But Red Dog, man, thank you too, brother. I want to thank all my contributors tonight. Red Dog, I like it. Here's $10 to not talk about oil again. That's freaking awesome. And Gary, my brother, man, thank you so much. Saying love the great info and the live chats, much appreciated, brother. You are much appreciated. I thank you very much. And guys, I'm going to wrap it up here with that. But hopefully that answered some questions, maybe shined a little bit of light on this whole crazy oil thing. I know that a lot of people like asking about it and talking about it, and I'm more than happy to do it. I had a great time researching this, looking into it. I got a chance to learn some things, relearn some things, affirm some things, and course correct some things that I kind of got wrong with some of my understanding of this. So, but guys, thank y'all so much. I really do love each and every one of you guys. Would not do this without you. And with that, I am going to wrap it up. Get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. I'm going to send it, don't bend it, keep a shiny side up. Ray, miss, and love you, brother. And with that, we are out. That's a wrap. Adios, guys.